So my name's Miriam Thake, and my husband and I have been trying to be plastic free since about January 2018, I think, so nearly 2 years now. Triggered by a number of different things, hearing about more of the climate emergency, and as people who like to travel, and my husband is from Canada, just sort of seeing abroad the impact of plastic in the oceans, and then trying to work out what we can do about it. I can't remember the original trigger. I remember talking about it at the Christmas before, the January 2018, and it was definitely my husband's idea, just said, let's do it. And once we decided, as a sort of January resolution, we said, rather than just trying to cut down, let's just try and go completely plastic free and see if it's possible. And so from the January, we then tried everywhere we can to look at all the different areas of our life that single-use plastic was coming in and see if we could cut it out. So when we first went plastic free, we did start carrying on our original routines and seeing if you could do that plastic free. And we do still use supermarkets, but a lot less than we used to. It's amazing when you go into a supermarket thinking, I can't buy plastic. When you first walk around, you think there is absolutely nothing here that I can buy. And that's not true, but you have to be slightly more inventive. So when you go, there's fruit and veg that comes sort of in a kind of sealed bag, and then you often have the loose fruit and vegetables, and they have those little kind of flimsy single-use plastic bags that you can take. But interestingly, you don't have to use them. I now just take my loose fruit and vegetables to the till, and some people report that they get slightly funny looks when they do that, but I've never had anybody ever have a problem with it. And I quite enjoy the looks from other people and from the cashiers, and sometimes people ask questions about, why are you doing this? And then that can open up a conversation about single-use plastic and what we're trying to do. And then it's just looking at, there are certain brands that are better at reducing the amount of plastic that they've got. If I can't find a brand that's completely plastic free, then generally we try and buy in bulk, because the bigger something is, then the fewer sort of tiny individually wrapped bits of plastic you can use. So there is a time investment, but for us, when we have the time to do it, that feels like something that is a priority and is somewhere that we're happy to spend the extra time. I think there's been a lot of surprising benefits from it that we hadn't thought about. We just were thinking about plastic in the oceans and seeing plastic in the streets, and that's what we wanted to try and reduce. But there have been a huge amount of benefits, I think. One of the things that really surprised me was that overnight my brain turned off to advertising, because almost all the things that are advertised are so covered in plastic or involve plastic that you suddenly go, I don't need that. So where before you would see, some new face cream and think, oh, maybe that will change my life, to some extent, that doesn't affect you anymore. And it was quite astonishing how much that just turned off immediately, and gives you a lot of brain space, I think, to think about other things. There's other benefits, how often do we have to take our bins out? Very, very rarely, because we're producing a lot less waste. We're eating a lot healthier, because pre-prepared food tends to be plastic free, and so we're eating a lot more fresh home cooked foods because we have to from some of the choices that we've made. So there's a lot of surprising benefits from it. There've been some interesting experiments online of people who've kept all of their waste for a week, and I think that's quite interesting to work out where your main plastic consumption comes from. So if you finish the week and you've got 15 plastic bottles left over, then do you need to buy your own your own reusable water bottle? If you're buying coffee every single day with a disposable cup, there are some really quick wins that you can just cut plastic out. And just being more mindful of it, so that whenever you buy single-use plastic, you're actively thinking about it and justifying it. Just that tiny sort of stop thought process can reduce plastic that we buy that we don't even need. And if you have that mindset when you go around the supermarket, so actively trying to choose brands that are better at reducing plastic, makes a big difference. And then once you go from there, I found it sort of snowballs, that once you start thinking about one thing, you then think about all the other different areas of your life. And there are lots of alternatives out there, and they're not too difficult to find. So this is how we get all of our dried foods now. So these are old coffee jars that were from a family member. So you take this in as an empty jar, they weigh it for you and give you a sticker that tells you the empty weight, and then you just fill it up from the bins that they've got and then reweigh it, and they will subtract it to tell you how much you need to pay for it. This is how we get our toilet paper that comes in a big cardboard box. So this is the brand that we like, and I actually zero waste use the outside wrapping as slightly odd Christmas and birthday present wrapping paper. We've gone old fashioned with our milk, so we get the milk delivered on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So the glass obviously goes back and is reused again and again and again, and you recycle the top bit. And then this is my shampoo. So this is an old, I think, elderflower cordial bottle that again I take to one of the zero waste shops, and they weigh it empty and then fill it up and then reweigh it to tell me how much the shampoo is going to cost. The focus has definitely been at home, but it's something that once you start doing, you then start noticing in all the different areas of your life. Working in a hospital, single-use plastic is a massive issue because of needing to keep things sterile and safe. The impact of having to reuse things is very challenging, and so a vast amount of stuff in hospital is single-use, and it comes wrapped in 2 or 3 layers of single-use plastic so that you can open things in a completely sterile way. So that's been really interesting as you cut down the plastic at home and come into less and less contact with single-use plastic. You know, if I put a cannula in a patient at work, the amount of plastic that's left at the end of a fairly simple procedure is enormous. And if you increase that by the number of cannulas that we put in every day, and also the stuff that we do in operating theatres, which is massive amounts of plastic, it can sometimes feel a little bit disheartening that we're reducing the teeny tiny little bits of plastic at home when that much plastic is coming out of hospitals. But for me, that's a non-negotiable. You can't sacrifice patient safety, patient health for all of this. And so I think you have to work out in your own mind where your lines are. And for me, that's a line that I think we should keep working on. I think we should try and keep working on safe ways to reduce plastic in hospitals. But I don't think it's somewhere that you can start cutting corners without really carefully thinking about it beforehand. Over the last 2 years, I think it's been interesting how society's views on this have changed, particularly with the David Attenborough stuff that's come out. This is becoming more of a mainstream thing that people are aware of. I think small things are changing, so less and less people I think are buying bottled water. You see more and more people carrying, you know, their bottles with them, and the same with coffee cups. Things are changing, but there's still such a huge way to go, and plastic is such a convenient and useful thing that I think it will take time to change. I think it's also important that we don't just get rid of plastic and call it a bad thing. A lot of the plastic that is used in food containment helps to keep food preserved for longer. So if you're going to go plastic free and you buy plastic-free things, you have to think very carefully about food waste, because it's very easy to cut plastic out and actually your food waste to go up, which causes its own environmental issues. So I think this is something that needs to have thought. It's not something that can happen quickly. I think there is, as the focus on this increases, I think brands are changing, and it's been interesting even over the last 2 years how much easier certain things are than they used to be when we first started. Particularly in Bristol, the number of zero waste shops is increasing. New shops are opening quite frequently, and within the supermarkets, the changes that are happening in the supermarkets, and the more their focus is on trying to cut down plastic. Sometimes it feels a little bit like greenwashing, but there is a real momentum that seems to be driven by consumers, which is important.